Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast from Practical E-Commerce, hosted by entrepreneur Eric Bandholz.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Bandholz back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. I hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the table from me, Joe.
Yep. Thanks for having me. This is great. Love your guys' setup. Thanks for the tour. You guys are doing it out here.
Yeah. Excited to have you here. All my guests are beautiful, but you're exceptionally beautiful and your partner is exceptionally beautiful. So I feel like I'm being graced by beauty right now.
Well, she gets that quite a bit, but definitely not me. So I appreciate you saying that, blowing up my ego a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's very rare for very attractive people to come into the shop and not be in the Beard Brand Barbershop.
Yeah.
So we see tons of good-looking guys there as well. So,
good.
But this isn't a beauty podcast. So why don't we talk about what do you do? Give us your 30-second pitch.
Yeah, I'll give you my 30-second pitch. So I own a company called Fulfill.com. And what we do at Fulfill is we are a marketplace that connects e-commerce brand owners with the right 3PL partners.
Yeah, that's like a 10-second pitch. Man.
Yeah, I just crushed that. So.
How long you been doing that?
So I've been in e-commerce for probably 9 or 10 years now. I've started a couple brands myself and ended up using some decent amount of success with those brands to start my own fulfillment company. Sold that a couple years ago to start what is now Fulfill.com. So we've been doing this for a little under 2 years now.
Yeah. How's it going? Because I would imagine, well, if my listeners are anything like me, you're getting hit up by fulfillment companies literally like every single day. And it gets kind of exhausting. But along the same lines, if from my conversations with other partners, like a lot of people are not happy with their 3PL.
Yes.
And it's almost like, so you have like a matchmaking service.
Yes.
What are the things that fulfillment partners offer? Because I would imagine most e-commerce owners are like, how hard can this be? You're just putting stuff in a box. Like, how are you getting this wrong? Help explain to our listeners, e-commerce operators, why it's so hard.
Absolutely. So first of all, I'll start with just a crazy statistic that Shopify came out in one of their supply chain industry reports last year. And there is a 38% year over year turnover rate in brands looking to find a new 3PL, which is ridiculously high, especially considering the fact that once you're already locked in with a 3PL, just the opportunity cost and the amount of money that you have to pay to switch to a new 3PL is exorbitant. And it's just such a pain in the ass to have to go through that process. So that number is very, very high. And when you're actually looking for a 3PL, there's no easy way to compare solutions apples to apples, right? So if, most brands don't have a logistics expert on their team, but even if you do, that person has to go through this, manual process of reaching out to 10, 15, 20, 40 different 3PLs and, getting their pricing, getting their solutions, putting that on some type of spreadsheet and then trying to compare that all against one another. And it's ridiculously hard because pricing is different for most 3PLs. Obviously, service level is different for most 3PLs. Communication levels are different for most 3PLs. So instead, you could come to a company like us at Fulfill, and we have 600 plus locations where we have quantitative data down to pricing, down to communication level, down to warehouse management systems, everything that you could imagine. And you submit your e-commerce information to our team, get on a qualifying call with us, and we take that information, ping that against our network of 600 plus locations, and narrow it down to a handful of 3PLs that you can talk to directly from us. So we kind of take all of the BS out of that and can narrow down based off of what's important to you. Are you looking for cheapest, fastest? Are you looking for someone that has direct communication channel via Slack? Are you looking for someone that has a bi-coastal operation where your inventory is coming into the port in California, so you want something in LA, but you also want something to split inventory and have something in Pennsylvania as well? We can do that for you guys.
How are you, I guess the question is, you have 600 partners. Are you talking to them every month to get pricing changes, or how do you stay up to date with what their rates are to be able to make that a comparative
Yes. Good question. So with the backend software system that we've built right now, it comes back to that point of not all pricing is created equal in the 3PL world. So people's pricing models are different, right? So right now, the best way that we've come up with it is having everybody submit a quote to us that is kind of all encompassing of their operation. Typically, people tier things out. So it's like pick and pack for customers between 0 and 500 orders per month, or between 1,000 and 5,000 orders per month. And the pick and pack can be tiered based off of that. So right now we have everybody's documentation, their pricing stored on the back end, and it's more of a manual process whenever we're going through that matchmaking. But what we're planning on doing within the next couple months is starting to tie directly into their warehouse management system. So we will get fed data like the, storage capacity that they have available, the customers that they have, meaning what vertical do they specialize in? What's their throughput per month? How many orders are they capable of shipping through a month? And starting to be able to figure out in real time exactly, what error rates are, carrier rates are, pricing rates are. So that's the ultimate goal that we'll be pushing to within the next couple months. But right now it's more of a manual process from a pricing perspective.
Yeah. Are you guys maintaining any kind of standards or feedback from customers where you talked about error rate? Like, how do you track that? How do you get that information back? Are you getting it from, the brand, or are you getting it from the fulfillment house? Because I would imagine they're two different.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we check in with both parties on a semi-frequent basis. Obviously, we don't want to be poking the brand every single day and say, hey, how's your experience going with this 3PL? But we definitely do follow-ups with all parties involved to see how the experience is with the brand, but also how the experience is with the 3PL. Like, are these guys doing the monthly order volume that, they told us all that they were doing? Is there any, we just check in with all parties involved. And right now, you're right. It is more of a manual process to really see who these great 3PLs are. But there's some really key indicators that we can use on the front end to determine on whether these 3PLs are going to be great for this customer right away. Yeah. So, we're kind of checking in with both parties, and we have a little over, 300 brands coming to us a month right now. So we've seen a really good amount of throughput where we've been able to test out lots of different 3PLs. And right away, we will have a core group of 3PLs that will be really great for certain verticals. So for example, 3PLs that have what I like to call these niche value-added services can be kind of no-brainer recommendations right away. For example, we have, an apparel-specific 3PL on our network that they got their start from starting an 8-figure apparel brand and ended up, turning that into a logistics company as well. And we bring a lot of our apparel customers as recommendations to them because not only can they offer a great logistics solution from a direct-to-consumer shipping perspective, a B2B perspective, a retail fulfillment perspective, they also have, 1,000+ retailers on their network that they have gotten into with their own apparel brands. So if we can bring them an apparel customer, we know they're going to knock it out of the park for them from a logistics perspective. And then also they can help push in companies that have great product into retailers in the United States. Not only are they a great logistics partner, now they're starting to sell for them as well. So these niche value-added services, it makes for an easy recommendation if someone is heavy into the apparel game.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the goal that I would recommend for any brand is like find a fulfillment partner who really does specialize in the products that you have. And, I can't imagine how it would be to have a fulfillment company and be like, I'm dealing with apparel, I'm dealing with, industrial widgets, I'm dealing with beauty products. Like they all have like different kind of needs and experiences, and there would be a lot of inefficiencies developed. How many of these fulfillment partners are requiring you to use their software versus, the brand software like a ShipStation or something like that?
So can you elaborate on that a bit more? Because what we do is we have a matchmaking software that we've built, but it's not a warehouse management system, right? So we haven't created this 4PL network where we require all the 3PLs that use us to ship through our software. We're a true matchmaking service in the sense that it doesn't matter what warehouse management system these 3PLs are using. It could be ShipHero, it could be Lodua, it could be Extensive, aka 3PL Central. We're mapping out everybody in the industry, and then we are finding who the true best solution could be, and then passing the e-commerce brand off to that 3PL and is their customer entirely. Doesn't matter what technology they're using.
Yeah. Because I think that's kind of one of the challenges is from a brand perspective is like we have our own kind of like built out ERP. and how we manage inventory and stuff like that. And then every other 3PL has their different software. And it's like trying to get them to play nice is not always easy. So, obviously my preference is to not change and to make them change, but I would imagine they kind of have that same preference.
Yeah, exactly. So, when brands come to us, there's a couple different scenarios that they could be in. They could already be with a 3PL, and maybe that 3PL has a Ship Hero or another warehouse management system like that. And they like that technology, but the 3PL isn't doing great from an operational perspective. So, we, can take that information and put that into our matchmaking process and say, hey, let's filter by only 3PLs that are using Ship Hero and do that. Or maybe they are expanding internationally and they want to create their own 4PL footprint. And so we can find international folks that are using warehouse management system and help them do an omni-channel inventory sync between all of their locations to find technology that fits them. Or maybe, like you said, they're using their own custom tech, but they want to integrate into other 3PLs or have a 3PL that's specific to retail fulfillment. I mean, you can name 100 different variables here. So we could filter down and say, hey, these guys are great at technological integrations. We think these guys would be a great fit. So yeah, this is all, the 100 different things that we consider when looking for the right partner in a scenario like this.
Yeah. And then you guys, I assume you take a commission on the sales, or is it an ongoing basis, or is it like a manufacturer's rep essentially is?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we've gone through a couple different pricing models while we've really figured this out. And I'd say probably 6 months ago, we really settled on something that works for all parties involved, being us, being the 3PLs, and then being the brands that are coming to us. And so we offer this as a free service for people looking for 3PLs, so the brands. And where we make our money is on the 3PL side of the house. And our pricing component is two different fees. So it's one, an introductory fee that is tiered based off of the size of the actual opportunity. So for example, between 1,000 and 5,000 orders per month would be a different price than introducing a company that's a startup or doing a couple hundred orders per month. And then when the lead actually closes, we get a couple percentage points based off of the fulfillment service fees for typically 36 months. And the fulfillment service fees, what we consider that to be is, your pick and pack pricing, your receiving pricing, your storage pricing, really everything besides kind of the uncontrollables, which are your shipping label fees, freight fees, if that's involved, but typically not, and packaging fees. So yeah, that's how we make our money in this equation.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of brands looking for new 3PLs, or is it a lot of people who are doing it in-house and finally going out of house? Or what do you typically see with the different brands and e-commerce companies?
So it's a little bit of both. And that's kind of what's great about the marketplace that we've built is that, we have hazmat 3PLs, we have cold storage, big and bulky, multi-site international 3PLs. So we can handle really all scopes that are coming into us. We've placed companies doing over $1 billion in ARR a year, and we can help the little guys who are just starting up that are looking for a great home, but are having trouble because typically all of these 3PLs out there have, minimum order quantities when taking on 3PLs. But, we have options for kind of everybody on the network. But I'd say where we're really seeing a lot of our leads coming right now, we're living in what I call the rise of the boutique level fulfillment center, where, you have a lot of these venture capital backed 3PLs out there who are amazing marketers and have these giant budgets to be able to spend millions and millions of dollars on Google ad spend a month, when in reality, there's a pretty high percentage chance that although they're great marketers, they may not be able to give you the operational experience that you can get from a boutique level 3PL. Someone, that can give you real-time communication, someone who can give you, industry leading pricing, and then someone who can really just give you that high touch experience and make sure they're hitting all their shipping SLAs that with some
SLA.
Service level agreement.
Okay.
Exactly. So basically, like a good example of that would be when your order comes in, are they able to ship that out within 24 business hours? And if they're not, that's not industry standard SLA. You should find a fulfillment center that not only writes into the contract that they will get your orders out within 24 business hours, but it has teeth behind it as well, meaning that if they don't hit that, they're refunding you for the cost of the shipping, the fulfillment at the very minimum. And people just work with VC-backed 3PLs where there's not really any negotiating from a standpoint like that and think that, oh, this is probably the best deal that I can get out there, when in reality, there's 30,000 plus 3PLs in the United States. And there's a lot of great options out there that you may not realize.
So I'm pretty excited to have you on the show because, we've just made the decision to do our own fulfillment in-house. And you said you used to run a 3PL. What the heck should I not do? What are all the mistakes that you made that I should learn from?
Yeah. Oh, where do I start? So I have a pretty interesting story with the growth of my own fulfillment center. So I started a couple games with my wife in the tabletop board gaming space, and we ended up doing pretty well. We're doing a couple thousand orders a month there. And we ended up going through 3 different 3PLs over the course of a year and a half. Just really not a great experience all around. So I ended up, this was right before COVID, bootstrapping my own 3PL called Ship Daddy, based out of central Pennsylvania, where we're from. And we literally started shipping my games out of my mom and dad's garage. And we ended up over the course of 2.5, 3 years, scaling up through 4 different buildings and purchasing a 140,000 square foot warehouse, filling that up. And then
with your own stuff or with other brands?
No. So with our own stuff was how we got our start and what was good, but then with all other brands. Yeah. And, it comes back to that niche value added services I was talking about, where the first 7 out of 10 customers that we signed were other tabletop board gaming companies, right? So we had that experience. We could do a really great job from a logistics and a pricing perspective for people in those spaces. And then we ended up growing to filling up with lots of different brands. But, we really specialized in the small parcel area where, like a 10-to-1 order to SKU ratio, any brands that kind of fit that model, we were able to be, pretty competitive across all fronts. But to come back to your question and talk about some main things to watch out for while you're growing your own fulfillment. And if you can do it in-house, like awesome, like do it in-house. It's just for a lot of brands and the seasonality that a lot of brands experience. Like for us, example, in the gaming industry, like we do 85% of our sales volume during Q4. So we load up and have all of this inventory, right? And if we weren't to use a 3PL and we were to lease a building year round, when, we're doing 85% of our sales in Q4, it just would have been not price advantageous for us to lease a building. And we're only doing a majority of our volume then. But again, if you can do your own stuff in-house, like highly recommend it. I would say one of the things, there's lots of tips I could give here, but one thing that I'll say is don't be afraid to negotiate your carrier rates year over year. So I imagine, you guys at your brand shipping the products that you do are probably shipping most of your packages under 5 pounds, correct?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person.
Okay.
But yes, they're pretty small.
Yeah, they're pretty small. So, if you guys don't have negotiated rates with like a DHL e-commerce, I would highly recommend looking into doing something like that, just because they'll be able to beat USPS rates, get a DHL truck backing up to you every day. And that's where you can make extra money if you need to. If you need to stack additional margin on, just try and get the best shipping rates that you can for your customers. Yeah.
So you can negotiate that. I've heard that like FedEx and UPS are not very flexible in the rates. Is that not true then?
They can definitely be flexible for the rates, but a FedEx and a UPS are the portion of the market share that they're trying to win there are in the, I hesitate saying bigger and bulkier, but it's in stuff that's above 5 pounds really. That's where they're going to be more competitive. And even FedEx is less trying to play in the 3PL space, and they're trying to work directly with brands. But, you can definitely negotiate rates with them. But where you're going to get the most competitive rates for under 5 pounds is with USPS and DHL. But USPS, they're a nightmare trying to negotiate rates with. And then UPS and FedEx, if you guys have bigger, bulkier stuff, like you definitely can do it. But a lot of it depends on regionality as well and who your rep is for your region. Like we lucked out in Pennsylvania where we had some really great people across a couple of those different carriers. And that was one of the big ways we were able to scale, like get some really competitive rates for small parcel. That became a niche for us. We were able to beat out, some of the bigger dog VC backed 3PLs in that area and really kept pushing into that space.
What are some of the negotiation tactics that work? Because you can't just be like, I need better rates. And they're like, okay, yeah, since you asked.
Yeah, that's a great call. And again, that comes back to who you're actually working with from a regional perspective. But what they're going to ask you pretty much right away is, okay, give me an exported CSV file of your total order volume for the last X amount of time. The more data that you can give them, the better. And what you do is basically build in, some type of monthly order projection model where you show them the growth of your company and say, hey, we're willing to bring everything over from USPS to you guys at DHL e-commerce. We'll bring all of that over to you guys. And this is what we're anticipating to do the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And, if you guys can show some good growth, like typically they're going to want to work with you, especially with a brand like you guys, which, is their ideal customer profile that they're looking for. Like you guys do ship smaller items, and you probably could bring over the entirety of your USPS business, which is a big competitive customer acquisition for them, instead of you guys being fragmented across 4 different carriers where they may only be able to win best rates on 10, 15% of your business.
Yeah. When building out your building, what kind of pitfalls should you look for? Like, do you need a forklift certification? And what kind of
This is a great question right here. And this is probably where I learned the most. I come from a heavy sales and marketing background, but had to do a ton of operations, obviously, while I was scaling at ShipDaddy. And this was definitely the weak part of my game that I failed a ton, but we learned kind of through hard knocks. And so just a couple off the top of my head. So we bought our location in pretty much the outskirts of our town that didn't have great access off of the highway for trucks to come down and actually back up to our location. So we had probably 5 or 6 different receiving docks, which at 140,000 square foot location is not great. We could have used so many more options like that once we really started to scale up. And it just wasn't great accessibility from the highway. So that's one thing to look for right there. Just make sure it's easy in and out coming from where the trucks are going to be, backing up, dropping inventory off, and then picking stuff up the carriers as they leave. So kind of one thing right there. 2, let me think here. We asked the question one more time. I'm trying
to... Just operationally, how do you build out your 3PL?
Got it.
I kind of alluded to forklifts and...
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of certifications or other kind of pitfalls to work out.
So forklifts is another good one. So
from ceiling heights, how tall should you go and things like that?
So from a forklift perspective, at some major, pallet in, pallet out, cases in, cases out warehouses, you definitely probably want to have that type of machinery, right? But for, e-commerce operations that are more pick and pack, where it's, you're breaking this stuff down and it's going out small parcel with one of the carriers, I would actually give an opinion that some people may give pushback on, but say you actually don't need forklifts and you may not want it just because of some safety hazards it will bring to your organization, definitely huge costs you're going to be paying. And you could just get away with using pallet jacks and electronic pallet jacks.
Yeah.
And so
how tall will they go? 10 feet, 12 feet or?
Pretty damn high. I'd have to go back and look at some of the electronic pallet jacks, but we had a couple of those at our warehouses, and some of the guys actually just preferred using that.
Yeah.
And again, the safety concerns made me much less anxious than driving these things around. It's just, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So the pallet jacks can go pretty high. And to come back to what you're talking about the actual racking of your operation, there's a lot of different thought theories behind how to build out the actual internal components of your warehouse. We had a really sharp layout with us, and maybe I could provide you a diagram or something later, but I'm going to do my best to try and explain this. But whenever you have someone dropping off inventory in your receiving, we had something that we called our football field, where we would just drag everything off the truck as fast as we could. We would drop those pallets off in the football field. And as long as that inventory was sitting there, we knew, hey, we need our receiving folks to come and do a quality assurance check on all of this inventory. We need them to manually count every single item that came in. And then we need to have them upload that inventory to the warehouse management system. And then after that, they would go through those 3 checkpoints right there, and they would take that inventory and they would drop it off in 2 different spots. So one spot being the long-term storage portion of the warehouse where you'd put your pallets that were going to sit there. And then 2, they would take individual units, cases, whatever, from the long-term storage section and fill up where your bins are in your pick and pack area. And then what, your pick and pack team does on a daily basis is the labels get printed. So you have your shipping labels and your pack slips, and they would go and pick from the smaller bins and shelf sections. They would put everything in the boxes. They would tape everything up, slap a shipping label on it, and then put it into the outbound section to go in a full circle to where the inbound was coming in. That's right next to where the outbound was going out. And so it was basically designed in a horseshoe where everything would just go around in a big circle like that, and you rinse and repeat. And when you know to take inventory from your long-term storage section and refill your pick and pack section, you do something called a replenishment report, which is on most major warehouse management system platforms, where you just run that on a daily or weekly basis. You refill all of your bins, and then you just keep rinsing and repeating from there. So that's generally how a lot of warehouses are structured.
Yeah. What kind of things do you need to look for in the management software system? Like, as a small brand, ShipStation is just print it out there, attach it, go on your way. But what does ShipStation not have that, warehouse management software is going to give you?
So I used ShipStation a couple years ago, and I've heard that they've actually added some pretty robust features to their platforms. But a ShipStation is like one of the best entry level label printing platforms that you could go to that starts to creep into more commercial grade warehouse management system technology. From what I understand, they have some pretty base level inventory management functionality on there. Their label printing's fantastic. You can plug in multiple shipping carriers. You can rate shop those different shipping carriers, I believe, because I know they have an agreement with UPS right now where maybe you can't rate shop, but I know there's some apps that you can use to find the best real-time shipping rates. And the pricing is fantastic, right? So like ShipStation is definitely a really great option. But, once you start to become your own 3PL and you're shipping for other customers, and once you or the customers that you're shipping for start to have more omni-channel requirements, so meaning you're selling on Shopify and Amazon and Walmart and eBay, that's when it starts to make sense to push into a more commercial grade WMS, I think. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, ShipStation, they're great. And I work with a couple of their execs and stuff too, and they have a really awesome team as well.
When you're building out the facility, buying shelves, buying pallet jacks, what are the best sources to get that equipment?
Yeah, great question. So we have a couple partners where, our 3PLs that we work with will ask for recommendations on, things like racking and equipment and forklifts and stuff like that. And I think a lot of that is regional based, especially for racking, right? A lot of these guys, the racking is kind of like, it's one shade different than the next guy's, right? And what it really comes down to when you're ordering racking and stuff like that in bulk, and even packaging, is how close is the facility that's manufacturing it to your actual 3PL? Because where a lot of these add-on costs are going to come from is in the actual freight to physically bring this stuff into your 3PL. So if you can find a good regional supplier for something like that, instead of kind of like a broker of a broker that's going to stack margin on and then just order it through a channel like that anyways, I think that's going to be your best bet, instead of just kind of listing out a one-size-fits-all racking supplier or something like that. And especially for packaging, like look for someone that's regionally based and has a manufacturing facility close to you. You'll be able to save quite a bit of money.
What do you search for? Like if I need to buy racks for my new warehouse, like obviously I know Uline's got some, but would I just search warehouse racks near Austin?
Yeah, I would put like warehouse racking near me or something like that and vet a couple of your options out. And it's funny because we're actually starting to play in that space as well a little bit, because what we're fundamentally building is a three-sided marketplace. So I talked to you about the first two sides of the marketplace. So what we've really perfected is connecting brands, side number one, with 3PLs, side number two. But what we're starting to really build out this year is connecting 3PLs, side number two, with vendors that support 3PLs, side number three. Yeah. Because we have warehouse management system companies coming to us. We have packaging companies coming to us. We have racking companies coming to us that are saying, hey, we see you have these 600 3PLs on your network that are growing at a pretty steady clip. Do they need X, Y, or Z services? And it's making a lot of sense for us to have partnerships with companies like this. And just like we're able to give great introductions from brands to 3PLs, now we can give great introductions from 3PLs to suppliers that can truly fulfill their best needs there. So that's where we're pushing into next. And to answer your question, hopefully you'll be able to come to us soon for that information.
What about like the size of racks? Like is the standard like a 48-inch depth is what you want to do, or?
Yeah. So size of a standard pallet is 48 by 40. And then typically the height is right around 60 inches, but you may want to go a little bit higher than that on your racking, just because stuff can come in, within a couple inches of variation from different manufacturers. And then typically what 3PLs do, anything that is over their base level size for what they deem their base level pallet size, they'll charge you like an oversized pallet fee, which, could be, double your rate since it's taking up 2 slots in the racking. But yeah, that's pretty standard sizing. And yeah, that's like, what Amazon is. I think they're 48 by 40, no higher than 72 inches, although 72 inches is like really high.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm 77 inches tall.
So yeah, exactly.
It's a pretty tall
So quite large.
So you mentioned it comes into your football field or your staging area and you unbox the pallets, count them all out, and then do you wrap them back up again, restack them? And is that the process for it?
Yeah, so you can rewrap the pallets. You can count things in a couple different ways. Like typically, you're not going to cut open every single carton and count every unit individually. But if any boxes are coming in, they're looking banged up, then you're going to want to cut those open and see if any of the product inside of the carton is actually banged up. But yeah, typically you can just count the cartons or even scan stuff in via barcode if you guys have that functionality. But you're right, you don't want to have to try and double up work and unrip all of the wrapping and then wrap that back up and put it on. But yeah, you do want your stuff wrapped up, especially if it's going up 1, 2, 3 different levels on the racking where it just can get like progressively more sketchy.
Yeah. I want to talk about the pick and pack aspect. Hiring people, is that a job that you have a lot of turnover? Is that a tough job to fill and keep? How much do you generally want to pay them? And then what kind of output expectations do you generally have? Obviously, every business has different degrees, but can they do 100 orders a day on average, 200 orders a day? Like what kind of things do you see?
Yeah, these are phenomenal questions. And that was one of the big things that thankfully we didn't have to worry about much when growing ShipDaddy because we started the company, in our hometown, right? So like 2 of my business partners were my best friends that we were wrestling together since 5th grade. The one guy, we literally named our brand after him because we were calling him the Ship Daddy. And we had lots of great family and friends that we could progressively keep bringing on into the operation. And where a lot of companies have trouble is during that Q4 flex season, right? Where they're scrambling, working with temp agencies, trying to bring on lots of people in a really fast manner to handle the giant influx of order volume going out through the holiday season. And, it was great for us because I could just tap into my parents and my 3 sisters and their boyfriends and stuff like that and kind of bring on people that we really trusted that were going to do a really good job and that already understood the fundamentals of our business and what we were trying to do. So it actually was kind of fun getting to do that and work with our different family and friends at our organization. But I've learned through the years that one of the biggest things you have to look for when buying a 3PL location or finding a new 3PL home is access to labor force. And that's why you look at like an Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is located in a very strategic part of the United States from a shipping perspective. But it's the reason that Ship Hero has a facility there. ShipBob has a facility there. Red Stag has a facility there. Name like 20 other different giant VC-backed 3PLs because the access to a labor pool there for them, there's lots of people that are willing to work and they're at pricing that is advantageous for them as well. So yeah, that's a really, really big thing to consider. And then in terms of pay, I would say that's a tough one to pinpoint. And I think that widely depends on market. So we have lots of 3PLs that we have in network in the Los Angeles area and in the New York, New Jersey area. And their labor rates are much different than a central Pennsylvania where we're from, where, you can be making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. And that's like, that's good living where we're from. So, or it's at the very least sustainable living, right? And the last thing I'll say is retention of warehouse workers is very difficult. And the example that I can give to that is a report I saw, maybe 1 or 2 years ago that blew me away, that Amazon has a 105% year over year turnover rate in hiring workers at their warehouse. They have to flip their entire workforce of their warehouse workers every year because working at Amazon in fulfillment, although you can make some pretty dang good money and there is a potential for trajectory to move upwards in the company, you are working. You are timed down to every detail. You are
peeing in bottles from what I hear.
You have people peeing in bottles. Like this stuff is very real. So it is really, really hard labor, which is why I saw those numbers again, and I'm at ShipDaddy and I said, well, what if we just build a company culture where people actually really want to be here and they want to work here and we treat them with respect? And if they work their ass off and do a great job, we're going to give them an upwards trajectory in the company and give them shares in the company and really make this something that people are proud to work at and grow together. And then if we have zero turnover rate and we don't have to train new people every time that they come in, I feel like these numbers are going to balance out somewhere.
Would you give like bonuses based on the amount of orders they would send out? Like if you hit these certain numbers, you get paid, more per box or something? Or is it like a flat fee that you do for?
We were getting closer to that point right before I sold and left. And I'm not sure what the guys have done since we've left, but I mean, I still talk to my buddies back there quite a bit and like they're crushing it. Like it's all of the OG crew that's still working there. Yeah. Everyone's still got smiles on their faces, seem to really be enjoying it. But I'm not sure if they've quite got to that perspective yet. And there may be some negative incentive alignments there for people that are trying to rush through potentially and may end up getting error rate through something like that. And also that's a tough one too, because that would be heavily affected by the accounts that they had under their umbrella too. Yeah. So, if they were working with, accounts that were just throwing one item in a poly mailer and slapping a label on it and sending it out, and the item weighed, a couple ounces, that's much different than a customer you have where they may only do, 50 orders a day, but you're lugging around 50-pound boxes that you have to get out. So I think that would be a tougher one to offer from a commission perspective, but definitely, giving out bonuses to your top people that are really in there helping you build this thing from the ground up.
Yeah. And then how many orders could you expect a general person to do for, let's say 5 pounds or less type of 1 or 2 items per?
Yeah, that's another really good question, but I'm trying to think back because we started to do some pretty big numbers at ShipDaddy, like close to, I don't want to misspeak, but maybe like 80 to 100,000 orders per month, that maybe over that during peak season. And, with the workforce that we were doing, like with a truly optimized operation, like you could definitely have people pick and packing in the thousands of orders per day. But let me caveat that by saying, again, it comes back to the account. And that's why for 3PLs, a lot of people are looking for that order to SKU ratio, because where you can really pump out volume is when you are doing bulk label prints of a company that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 SKUs, and it's very low variation of what you're putting in those packages. And you're just literally grabbing cases, opening those cases up, pulling the one item out, sticking it in the poly mailer, slapping a label on it, and then throwing it in the Gaylord, which is what the carriers pick up in bulk whenever they go to take that to their sorting facilities. If you have a company that is an apparel brand and they have, 500 different SKUs, 1,000 different SKUs, and you have to manually walk aisle to aisle and pick all of those out and make sure that they're right and barcode scan them out, that is a whole different level of how much output you can pick and pack.
Yeah. Cool. Where can people find you, support you?
Yeah, so you can find us at, so myself personally, I'm pretty active on Twitter at Joe Speezy, JoeSpeezy. Try to be really active with, my followers and people on there. So feel free to reach out, shoot me a DM, shoot me a tweet, whatever. Also on LinkedIn at Joe Spisak. My last name's Spisak. And then our company is fulfill.com. Yeah, FULFILL.com. Same thing. Feel free to reach out. Like, we love talking shop from an e-commerce branding perspective, from a 3PL perspective. We're really fun people to work with, so never hesitate to reach out.
Sweet, man. This has been another e-commerce conversations. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did and took away as many nuggets that I took away from it. Cheers. Keep on growing.